Welcome back to The Comfy Chairs, a podcast from 123 Limited. This is your host, Kate. Identity, what we believe about ourselves, or a sense of one's personality, strengths, and even relationships, is a powerful component of leadership. In many ways, identity serves as the template for how we approach every interaction. So having a clear and comprehensive picture of yourself is important if you hope to be an effective and kind leader. But what about the parts of you that you can't see? What about your blind spots? Countless leaders have been derailed by blind spots, the behaviors, attitudes, and traits they can't see for themselves. These are the actions and choices that cause others to lose trust or confidence in their leadership. It takes self-awareness and humility to acknowledge that you may have a blind spot, but that effort doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to see it. So how can leaders bring their blind spots into focus, making them visible and manageable? My guest today has developed a framework, the strategic identity shift, that helps high-achieving leaders understand what it takes to create an intentional and authentic identity. Her focus on habit transformation and interpersonal impact, as well as her expertise in leadership and social psychology, make her a perfect fit for today's conversation. Welcome to The Comfy Chairs, Bena. As I said, I'd love to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves, so please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for letting me be here today. I'm looking forward to our conversation. As you mentioned in the intro, I am a social psychologist and executive coach, and I like to work with high-achieving leaders as they're navigating growth, sometimes burnout, career transitions, and I really love to focus on that space of identity, of influence, and helping them create a sustainable leadership transformation, whatever that looks like for them.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you.
And where I'd like to start is with this idea of being intentional about your identity. Because so often I think it's happenstance for us. It just kind of comes together over a lifetime. But what does it take to do this in a way that supports personal growth and evolution while sustaining authenticity?
Yeah, I love the question. And I think the big thing about identity is so much of us leaders and otherwise everybody, we tend to operate on autopilot. And in part, that's out of necessity. There's no way we can process all of the information we're flooded with. And this was true even before the internet.
Right.
This is before the 24-hour news cycle. There's so much information that our senses give us, sight, hearing, taste, all the things that we can't process all of it. So we create shortcuts, we create heuristics, we create these, whether we start internalizing whatever our role is or what the expectations are. And that's how a lot of our identities are formed. We pick them up along the way. Somebody tells us, this is who we need you to be in this environment, in this family, in this job, in this role. And so we create these identities and we refine them along the way, usually unintentionally or unconsciously, and we go on autopilot, and those identities serve us until they don't. So getting to that space of being intentional with your identity, it requires self-reflection, it requires some pattern recognition, and it's really about being able to take action that's aligned with not just who you've been, but who you are now, and kind of more importantly, who you are becoming, who you want to be as a leader. So it's this process of, that getting to that stage, like you said, of being authentic with it, being intentional with it. It's not just about becoming somebody else, but it's about being able to evolve towards the identity that you hold that is most aligned. It's your most impactful self. And I have a 5-step system, the strategic identity shift, that walks people through this process. So I can walk through the 5 steps at high level, or I can just leave it at that.
I think I definitely want to go there, but first there are a few things I want to respond to, because when we talk about intentional identity, I worry, probably more than I should, about people feeling like they are creating a an identity. They are creating
Mm.
a personality or a mask.
Yeah.
So that question of staying true to yourself, I think, is very important. And
Hmm.
I like this, that it's a goal to not become someone else, but to become a better or the best you.
Yeah. The most aligned you.
Aligned. Yeah.
Aligned.
And
I think alignment is a key word there
it
because,
is. It is.
yeah,
And what are we
it,
aligning to is the natural question.
right. And I think that part, especially, I mean, like I mentioned, the 24-hour news cycle, this whole social media, this influencer culture that we're in, there's, I don't want to say that everybody's pretending, but it can be very exciting to create an
Hmm.
identity of who you think you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
But that's not a true identity. That's a role that you're playing.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, when the camera's on, I'm this, I'm polished, I'm whatever. And behind the scenes, I'm itchy, I'm scratchy, I'm all these other things. And so there's one thing of saying, okay, show up as your best self when you know the spotlight's on you. And it's another thing to show up as somebody who you're not.
Hmm.
So there's the advice of fake it till you make it. And there's some value in that when it comes to like faking the confidence to show up, but not faking the skill set.
Hmm.
You don't want to go out and present yourself as having expertise that you don't,
Okay.
right? And at the
Yes.
same time, if you have that expertise, but your challenge is you prefer being behind the scenes, or you might be introverted, or you might have other issues that make you not promote yourself or put yourself out there, and somebody calls on you, that's not a fake identity. You have that expertise. So it's about how do
Correct.
you that fake it part is the faking the confidence, faking that
Hmm.
ability to like, I can walk into this room because you know that you belong to be in that room.
Hmm.
So there's a difference there. But I think the big thing is with alignment is when you're aware of what your values are, when you're aware of who you want to become and where those spaces that you want to be, the things you want to achieve, the legacy you want to leave, the impact you want to have, that's when you're able to go, okay, how do I show up in a way that's
Hmm.
aligned with this identity that I'm creating, as opposed to just coming from this default autopilot identity it's served me well to get to here, but it's not going to get me to that next level.
Yeah. I'm reminded at the start of the pandemic, like a lot of people, I was struggling. And my circumstances were such that I was still having to go to work. I didn't experience quarantine because I worked in healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
but I had been on vacation right before the world closed down. So I missed out on a lot of the information
Mm-hmm.
and the decisions that were made, and I just felt lost and like I wasn't contributing. And I remember having a very stern talk with myself one day in my office, uh, back in early 2020, about you're not behaving in a way that is aligned with how you want to show up in your job,
Yeah.
Catherine. Um,
Ooh, full name,
oh
Catherine.
yeah. I speak very sternly to me many times. I need it.
We all have that voice. Yeah.
Yes. But the question that I landed on was, will I look back on this and be proud of how I behaved?
Mm.
And the reason I bring this up is I think we have this opportunity, if we're being intentional about our sense of self and how we show up, to find those little moments for choice making.
Hmm.
Things like, will I be proud of this? Will this become a good memory?
Yeah.
Will people respect what I've done? Will they see this as aligned with my values? So I think that's one of the little ways that we can start intentionally crafting identity,
Hmm.
is by asking ourselves questions about that future self.
Hmm. Absolutely. I agree. And I think it's interesting because there are times that even being intentional, if we take a moment and step back, our on the outside, our behaviors may not change,
Mm-hmm.
but when we are intentional and like we recognize, oh, I have a choice in this moment. I'm going to do this thing and I can do it because it's what everybody else expects of me. And then I'm going to go into martyr mode and I'm going to be frustrated and resentful. Or I can do this thing because, oh, wait, I remember that this is what I value. I'm doing this thing because it leads to another goal, or because it has the impact, or because I love my family and I know everybody else is stressed. So I will be the one to do the dishes for the fourth night in a row, right?
Yes.
You
Well,
know,
that
but it's
sounds
that
like a very
story.
real
Yeah,
illustration.
I mean, that was what maybe triggered to me. So there are moments I'll be sitting there, I'm like, how am I the only one who sees that the sink is full of
Hmm.
dishes? And I go, oh, wait. Am I doing the dishes? Am I going to tell the story that I'm doing these dishes because everybody left them and I'm martyr mom? No. I'm going to do these
Hmm.
dishes because it bothers me to have them in the sink more than it bothers anybody else. I own that about myself. And because I don't want to have this interaction when I know that everybody else has this deadline or that.
Hmm.
So when we are intentional about those choices and what it means for us, that
Yes.
story we're telling ourselves, the behavior may look exactly the same to somebody on the outside, but the meaning it has for us can be night and day different.
You used the term most impactful self earlier, and
Mhm.
that's you have greater impact when you're doing things. This is it's a very facile statement.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's a lot that goes with it, but let me make this sweeping generalization that we can have more impact when our motivation is aligned with our behaviors,
Yes.
when we're not burdening ourselves with things like resentment
Mhm.
or our personal interpretations and the stories we tell ourselves.
Keeping score that if I do
Hmm.
this and somebody owes me that, or I'm doing this to get like that
Exactly.
transactional space,
Hmm.
we have to have our own reasons for doing the things we do.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. So this is conceptually kind of a shorthand of identity and intention.
Mhm.
Then we come to the other part of this conversation, blind spots.
Yeah.
Obvious question. The very simple question to start with is, why are blind spots a problem in leadership?
Okay. I like the question, and I will say that blind spots are not always a problem in
Correct.
leadership. So think about when you're driving a car. We all
Hmm.
know that vehicles, for the most part, have a blind spot. The blind spot's really only a problem if you're trying to change lanes, there's somebody in it, and you didn't check it. That's when that blind spot's a
Yes.
problem, right? But in leadership, those blind spots, they can end up eroding trust, they can erode effectiveness, and it's not because of it you're not doing anything maliciously when you have those blind spots, but it's because of that lack of alignment. And a lot of times it
Hmm.
shows up not just in it's not that the danger is in, oh, I don't see these things, but it's how your team and your peers and the people you're working with start to adapt around those blind spots without telling you.
Okay.
So if you have a blind spot around, like you don't realize how defensive you get, and you think, oh, I'm having this team meeting and I want people to punch holes in this project so that we can, fix those leaks before they're a problem. But as soon as somebody voices anything contrary to what you've laid out, if you start over explaining and getting defensive, then people are going to stop bringing those up to you.
Hmm.
And that creates a problem. Like somebody can say, hey, this is going to crash and burn, but it's not safe for me to say it because the boss is going to get super defensive. And then all of a sudden, like all these dominoes fall. So people stop saying that.
Hmm.
If your blind spot is around over functioning, you may think, I know how to solve the problems. I know everything needs to happen. And as soon as I see something, I see a gap, I'm going to step in and do it. Well, your team feels that as micromanagement,
Hmm.
and people aren't going to want to be in that space. So, depending on what your blind spots are, when you're working with your team or even your peers, the way they start to adapt to those blind spots, and we all have them. I don't mean to say that like, oh, every blind spot's, like I said, they're not always bad,
Hmm.
but they can become bad because
Hmm.
you become less effective as a leader. People don't trust you. People don't think it's a safe place to work with you, or they start doing things to manage your blind spots for you,
Hmm.
and then you can't fix them. And nobody fixes blind spots alone. Like it requires reflection, it requires feedback, it requires that ability to have some of those brave conversations and to be open to what people know about you that you may not know about yourself.
So identifying blind spots,
Yeah.
the first and I believe probably most obvious natural way to do so is requesting feedback.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm starting off with, I resent a little bit that you use defensiveness as your first example, since that is my Achilles heel.
Mm-hmm.
But If
None
defensiveness
of us
is,
want to be wrong.
oh my
I'm like, I'm
gosh,
not defensive. I'm just explaining. You're like, no, that's
right?
defensive. We got it.
No. Oh, I feel attacked, so I'm now going to go on the
Yeah.
offensive. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, like I said, my Achilles heel. But if I'm able to get feedback that accurately reflects my blind spot to me, that is sort of the level one,
Yeah.
safe and easy to do, or not safe, but relatively easy to do, straightforward. What are other ways to go about identifying blind spots if it so happens that getting feedback is not feasible because of the blind spot?
Yeah. Um, Sometimes what was it, Sherlock Holmes? It's like identifying the dogs that don't bark.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay, there are dogs that aren't barking here. So I think if you're not getting the feedback, I think that's a sign in itself. Like if
Hmm.
you ask for feedback and everyone goes, "Oh, you're great," you go, "Ooh, people
Yeah.
don't feel safe giving me the feedback,"
Hmm.
right? If that's all
Hmm.
you get. And I mean, maybe you are great and exceptional. And sometimes, we can be in those moments where everything is going well and maybe there isn't immediate feedback. But I think there's also, it's that pattern recognition.
Hmm.
it's it's taking that step back and going, okay, when I am stressed, because here's the thing, those blind spots, those habits, those patterns, those are the things that show up when we are stressed, when we are dealing with
Hmm.
uncertainty, when we are in these spaces of not necessarily knowing what the right step is. Those patterns are going to come in like heavy, right? So recognizing what that pattern is in those moments of stress, are you the person that goes, oh, it's just easier for me to do it myself? Okay, well then maybe you're over functioning. If in that stressed moment you go, well, I can't, like, I just need another review, I need another tweak, I need another, okay, well maybe that's perfectionism showing up.
Hmm.
So if you don't have somebody to ask for the feedback, like if you work on your own, like I'm self-employed, I work by myself, there aren't a whole lot of people to go, okay,
Yeah.
where's my feedback? Luckily, I have coaches and mentors and friends that I go, what am I
Yes.
doing? And they go, hey, Bena, you're doing this. I'm like, oh, got it. Nope, I've heard that before. Yep, that pattern shows up. Okay. Um, so there's that asking for feedback, but also that reflection, that pattern
Hmm.
recognition, the figuring out when I'm coming from that space of stress or uncertainty or lack of, if I lack of sleep, how am I showing up? Okay,
Hmm.
that could be a hint at a blind spot that maybe it doesn't need to be addressed right now, but store it away for later so that I have some processes or systems or alternate ways to react or respond, even maybe showing up in this way that doesn't necessarily help me.
I think that we also have opportunities in terms of pattern recognition when we're encountering issues to start with, how am I contributing to this? How might
Hmm.
I be the source of the issue?
Yeah.
And that's everything we're talking about requires, you've mentioned reflection, intention is there as well. It requires so much rigor.
Hmm.
And I want to highlight that, not to discourage people or for them to kind of lose hope, but recognizing that leadership, particularly impactful leadership that is continually advancing, high performing and getting better, it doesn't just happen.
No.
Identity can just happen, but high functioning identity and leadership requires that we devote our time and our attention.
Hmm.
So knowing that that takes time, just to even have a whole humbling sometimes view of ourselves, you've put all this effort in to make choices, to reflect, to see the blind spot.
Hmm.
Now what?
Okay, ask the question a different way.
Okay. So,
Because I like my brain was like, oh, and I want to share this, and I was like, I want to make sure that I'm answering the question that you're asking.
I want to hear what your answer is. It's essentially, so I find I have a blind spot and I can name it. I get feedback or through reflection.
Yeah.
What do I do about a blind spot? How do I keep it in focus? How do I not lose sight of it?
I think there's value in finding the people who can shine the lights,
Hmm.
shine a spotlight on that blind spot for you, that person who can help you be accountable, who can
Hmm.
give you those alternatives. I think one of the questions you mentioned how hard it can be to maintain that rigor of like, okay, I'm challenging myself. How much of this is, a pattern? How much of this is
Mm-hmm.
autopilot and this is intentional? But a question I love to ask is when like a client comes to me and they're talking about this challenging situation, and this person's doing this because of da 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 da, and this is happening because of this, and I have to, and they're justifying why they're showing up. One of my favorite questions is, okay, but what else could be true?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have you know these people, you've experienced them. This is what you think of their patterns, and this is how you're showing up. But if it's not getting you to the outcome you want, if you're continuing to struggle in this space, you're continuing to, whether it's, a lack of communication or this overfunctioning or those things, like what else could be true in this situation, and how would that change how you're showing up? If you're not going in there just being reactive, but you're going in trying to be responsive instead, there's that space to go, what else could be true about this?
Mm-hmm.
But once to kind of come back to the actual question of once that blind spot is identified, then it comes down to experimenting. Pick a low stakes environment where you go, okay, I know I tend to assume that I've been really clear in my communication, but maybe I'm under communicating. Okay, how do I show up in this space and communicate much more intentionally? How do I make sure that the person on the other end is able to hear my message? Because so much of the time, leaders can think, oh, I said we need this is our project, this is our problem, this is our structure, this is our outcome, go execute. And everyone in the meeting smiled and nodded and said yes. And then a week later, or 2 weeks later, or a month later, or at the end of the quarter, you check in and the needle hasn't moved all that
Mm-hmm.
much. And the leader comes back and goes, but I was very clear about what I wanted. And I go,
Were you
but
now?
yeah, yeah. First of all, were you? But did you take a step back and agree that, did everybody agree that there was a problem? And if there was a problem, did they agree what the problem was? Did they agree with the solution? You just went in there and told them, do this and this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are going to do it because you're their boss and they're going to go execute. And other people are going to sit back and go, they don't know that we've already tried this 6 different ways. They don't know that we've done this or that, or this is the bigger problem. We can't fix this until we resolve that. But that communication isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about finding those moments to experiment. Go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so where can you communicate differently? How do you delegate instead of, hold on really tight because you want it to be perfect? Well, trust that you hired the team who can do it. And if not, then
Correct.
guide them to do it your way as opposed to just doing it for them. So there's some experimentation, and I think reframing. I think reframing what things mean, because there are times that, if you're showing up and you want everything to be perfect and you go, okay, but if I don't do it myself, it's not going to be right. Well, then let's talk about trust and delegation instead.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, you made the point earlier, too, that I think it actually comes into play with all types of feedback and opportunities for change and growth. A blind spot's really only a problem if you're trying to change something, right? We
Mhm.
check our blind spots when we're changing lanes behind the wheel. So again, it's am I stuck? Am I not able to make this move that I need? Then maybe I need to do something about this blind spot. But you may also choose, for a whole list of reasons,
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave this be. I don't
Yeah.
need to keep looking at it. I don't need to check it. If I can push the metaphor a little bit, I'm going to stay in my lane.
I'm on cruise control.
Right?
For where I'm going, where I'm cruising, it's going to get me
Yeah.
there.
And that can
But
be
it's
right and
where,
appropriate.
yeah. But if the goal changes, or if
Mm-hmm.
you want your experience to change, if you're cruising, but you're cruising and you're miserable and you're burnt and you're cruising
Exactly.
towards burnout, then something's got to change, right? So
Exactly.
it's a matter of how intentional are you being with where you're actually going,
Mm-hmm.
and how much are you just following the path that somebody set out before you. And that path may be great, but the path may have been great when you started on it and you've grown, or life has
Right?
changed, or,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's time to deviate from the path. Maybe it's time to create your own. So,
Yeah. Well, that brings us back to intentionality again.
yeah.
Am I making choices about the directions I'm heading? And again, it's a metaphor that we could probably use until it cries. But as you are moving forward, are you headed the right way? Are you going the right direction? And if the answer is no, and you're not getting where you need to be, whether that's personally, professionally, one specific project or result you're trying to accomplish, then checking for blind spots should become part of how you function, how you operate.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Uh, Now you've teed this up really beautifully. The next thing I wanted us to spend a little bit of time on, it's because you discussed it in a recent LinkedIn post
Mhm.
and it caught my eye, and then you've mentioned the same topic a few times already, about perfectionism. So I think it's its own blind spot, very much, often, always for many of us. But I think it can also become a barrier to overcome the problems we can't see.
Yes.
So
Um,
yeah, so
yeah,
how do we help ourselves and others
yeah.
with that?
I think I talk about perfectionism a lot because I identify as a recovering perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge, I think of perfectionism as another form of self-sabotage
Mm-hmm.
because the challenge with perfectionism is that it feels productive. And we love to champion productivity. We think if I'm not being productive, then whatever I'm doing doesn't have value. And I mean, I've revisited that for myself over the last few years, working on it with my
Mm-hmm.
husband, with lots of clients. Like, no, 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 we don't. Our value is not just in what we produce. We are valuable without being productive every second of every
Yeah.
day. But because perfectionism feels productive, we tend to like put blinders on about the fact that a lot of times it's rooted in fear,
Yes.
whether that's a
Yes.
fear of failure, a fear of judgment, a fear of just being irrelevant. And we just think that, oh, if I do everything perfectly, then I'll be accepted, then I'll be loved, then I'll be invited, then I'll be whatever. Perfectionism, like that's one of those things that gets conditioned into us at a very young age
Mm-hmm.
that so many of us pick up, especially high performers, high achievers. I think it's like gifted kid syndrome. You're like, oh, if
Oh
I'm
yeah.
perfect enough, then I'm going to get my gold star, my little ribbon. And you can have a wall of gold stars, but eventually you go, oh God, I'm exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being so perfect for everybody else because that's how I formed this identity, but I don't want to do that anymore, right? Um, it creates a very narrow definition of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to say that there is no such thing as perfect. And if you ever, and if it was, if we could be perfect, it would be so boring.
Yes.
If we were able to be perfect at everything all the time, there would be no fun in that. There would be no challenge in that. There would be no growth in that. And growth can be scary, growth can be uncertain, but it's also exciting and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is where we get the opportunities to meet new people and make new connections and find new hobbies and develop new skills and read a new book and just have a new thought,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if we think that there's one way to be, if there's one way to be perfect, there's one way to be successful, then there's no room for growth. There's no room for experimentation. There's no room for rest. And this is where
Oh yeah.
reframing is really powerful because if you think of, I mean, I actually had a client say to me a couple weeks ago, he's like, I think you and I both have this challenge where we think, if it's not hard, it's not worth doing. And I was like, that, I mean, that used to be one of my, I've identified that as a limiting belief. I was like, if it's worth doing, it's got to be hard. And I'm like, no, things can be easy, but sometimes that when something is easy, it's a sign of mastery.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really are an expert at this and it's easy to you. So you discount it because you think, oh, this is so easy. Everybody can do it. And meanwhile, people are watching you do this going, that's magic. I mean, think about people who, I mean, I tend to be a spreadsheet person,
Oh yes.
but I know a lot of people who are not. And they go, you can look at a spreadsheet and do this formula and that's magic. And other people go, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But that ease is a sign of mastery. And people think if it's not easy, it's not valuable or it's not worth talking about. No, you've just reached that level.
Love
It's
that.
not lazy to do the easy thing. When you're delegating, that can be a sign of trust. It's not saying, "Oh, I can't do this thing." It's not a sign of weakness to say, "You know what? I know how to do this thing, but I need to focus on this other project, so I'm going to delegate this. I'm going to have somebody
Mm-hmm.
else step in and do this because that's what I hired them for."
Mm-hmm.
But letting go of that need to be perfect all the time, it gives you that space to do the next thing. It gives you, you have to give yourself permission to not be perfect, to recognize that perfection is not a real thing, and then reframe the fact that sometimes good enough is what's needed. Not everything has to be A plus level work.
Yeah.
Sometimes B plus is great. Could be
Perfect.
more than people were looking for even.
It's the idea of satisficing. that we
Mm-hmm.
want something that satisfies and is sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad too that you brought up the topic of boring, perfect being boring. Um, I've been doing a lot of thinking and talking and writing in the last year or so about, frankly, about how fallible people are. I've talked about this before, so for listeners that have stuck with me, this won't be a surprise. But my motto is people are awful. You, you gotta love them. You gotta
Yeah.
love them. And
Yeah.
one of the things I think, you know, I could go on and on this topic because it's my motto. It's the thing I'm interested in. It's literally the thing I'm writing about these days. But we none of us are perfect. We are flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that's part of what brings interest into the world.
Absolutely.
So yes, a blind spot can be a derailer for someone, but it's also a fabulous way for us to tap into our humanity as leaders and as people on teams.
Yes.
To be able to say, here's something, I don't know if I'm doing this right or wrong. I think I have a blind spot. I can't do X alone. Or I can forgive you for the errors you make in your blind spot because we're both human and flawed.
Yes.
I had some feedback about a part of a writing group I'm in. Somebody didn't like the term flawed because it's like, well, that has to be fixed then. But I don't know. I don't know about that. My husband has a gap in his two front teeth, and I love it.
Yeah.
Objectively, you could say that's a flaw, but it's part of what makes his appearance so lovely to me.
Yeah.
And
There's a uniqueness to it.
Yeah. So I think there's this space of let me learn my blind spots, not just to improve, but also to be able to say, particularly if I'm a leader, I too am not perfect.
Right.
And there's interest and excitement and connection when we acknowledge that, hey, we mess up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think of a blind spot. It's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity. And again, like you said, they don't all have to be fixed right away. Sometimes like you're coasting and that's just fine. But it's when you see that blind spot that you go, I mean, we often we know things about ourselves that we may not admit out loud.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There are all these moments where I go, okay, like you know what the answer is here. There's something holding you back. Let's figure out what that is. Let's, process or work through,
Yeah.
what limiting belief is keeping you in this space that's so uncomfortable. But the blind spots can be, I don't want to say the blind spots necessarily need to be celebrated, but it's that imperfection, I think, is definitely worth celebrating. This is where, like you said, interest comes from. If we were all, I mean, Stepford wives, right?
Yes.
Like there's, what's exciting about that if everyone's exactly the same?
Nope. It's pretty boring.
In fact, I remember my first leadership camp I went to at age 14.
Okay.
That's a thing.
Yep.
I still remember one of the things that they told us was if you and your friend always agree, one of you is unnecessary.
Oh.
I'm like, exactly. If perfect was a thing and we all try to be perfect, then what's the point of it? Like we need that variety. We need that. I mean, we need that diversity. We need those things.
Exactly.
It makes us better as a group.
Exactly. I think that is a wonderful case. Blind spots are a business case for diversity on teams and for having people that will have your back. Hey, will you stay on the parts of me that I can't see, and I'll do the same for you.
And now, granted, that does we do need an environment of psychological safety for some of that, which is not the case in every industry and every organization. Some places it may not be safe to admit those blind spots, but the reality is we all have them.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we do ourselves any favors by taking on that never let them see you sweat mentality. But it would be naive to say that this is an easy thing to pull up and bring out. in every organization.
Correct.
You're absolutely
You and I
right.
are
It's
talking
not.
because we spend time in this space, but yeah,
Yeah.
in a lot of organizations, they're not going to stand up and go, "Hey, I have blind spots. Who wants to point them out to me?"
Right.
Might not be safe.
Well, there's also this line too. There's a difference between humility and vulnerability in leadership
Yes.
and just to be outrageous, what I'll call nakedness.
Yes.
Admitting I have blind spots, admitting that I have weaknesses, it doesn't mean that I have to air my dirty laundry.
Correct.
I don't have, you mentioned the things that you'll admit only to yourself, sometimes only under duress, right?
Yes.
Those those things that you think about yourself in dark moments, you don't have to tell everyone
Right.
about them.
Because they're
So
not always true either.
yeah, they're
Some of those, the Catherine voice in our head
yes.
isn't always accurate or kind. So they're not
Yeah,
always true.
exactly. So there is this line of I can be human and humble. I can embrace that I'm fallible, even though I hold a leadership position,
Hmm.
and I can still be decisive and confident and capable and competent because I'm in a role that I have responsibility for myself and for you.
Exactly.
So wonderful. So, would you tell us some about your framework? Now, I'd like
Oh,
to
absolutely.
learn a little bit more about that at this
Yes,
stage.
yes, yes. So it's called the Strategic Identity Shift Framework, and there's 5 steps. And the idea really is about how can we be intentional with the identities that we're using for ourselves as a leader in an organization and our personal lives. The first step is reveal, and that is when we're really taking a look at what is that internal narrative that maybe isn't so helpful. Where have we picked up a
Okay.
role, an identity, some experiences that maybe where are some of those blind spots? What's keeping me in this space, in this comfort zone? So there's a reveal stage. The second step is reclaiming. And it's kind of asking of what are the pieces of you that you have minimized or that you haven't been able to bring to work because they weren't valuable in this stage, but you know that this is something that you love to do, or it's a skill you've developed,
Mm,
or it's an opportunity for you. Where can you reclaim not just who you've been, but who you want to be and who you want to become? So we start with revealing, we go to reclaiming. The third step is redefining. And redefining, this is where we're digging into like what are your values, your core values now. I have an exercise I do with all of my clients,
huh.
because a lot of people you talk to and they go, oh, I know what my core values are, and I go, cool, name your top 5, and they go, oh, I value family, I value, fun, whatever. But doing this exercise, being able to say, at this stage in my life, these are the things I value most. And there's a step in the process where you operationalize them. What does it
Okay.
look like when this value, when you're this need is being met, right? So if you value unique experiences, and that's a piece that you love to travel, but you haven't taken a trip in 2 years, or you haven't, there's nothing on the calendar, you go, okay, this might be why you're feeling disjointed, because one of your
Mm-hmm.
core values isn't being met right now. So in that redefine, we're redefining success, we're aligning with the values, the vision, the legacy that you want to create. And I think a lot of people think, oh, legacy, that's, it's decades down the road. Oh, no, 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 you're creating a
Yeah.
legacy, you're creating ripple effects everywhere you go. So be intentional with it. Like, let's redefine what it is you're actually creating. The fourth step is reinforce. And this is about, okay, so we've defined what success looks like. We're being intentional with this identity. We're reclaiming these pieces that we let go by the wayside, or haven't used. And this is where we're reinforcing with the systems, the structures, the communication of how do I
Okay.
really show up? What do I need to be this leader? And then the fifth step is radiate. And that's about embodying this leader with the support, with the all the pieces you need to really show up. Where are the opportunities for you to be this leader? What are these behaviors? Is it showing up differently in communication? Is it showing up differently in decision making and your strategic planning and all these different ways? So that's the strategic identity framework.
It's
Those 5 steps.
beautiful. Beautiful. Can we stick with redefining for a little bit?
Mhm.
I'm very curious because it's an area of interest for me and something I've coached myself. So I'm always like, how do you do that? How do you help people define their core values?
Well, the core values, I have an exercise that,
Okay.
I've developed over the years. So, it's a PDF. But we will have conversations about it because sometimes they'll get partway through the exercise and go, yeah, I can't decide between these 10. And I'm like, okay, but like if what does this one look like? And then can those fit underneath each other? So there's a whole process where you're
Hmm.
picking these essentially adjectives out and then you're grouping them and you're figuring out which one is the identifier for this group. So you may say, family matters and relationships matters and da 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 da, but once you drill it down, it's really about connection.
Okay.
It's about feeling part of something bigger. You go, okay. So then when you're connected, it may, in this stage of life, family may be more important. In this stage of life, it may be friends, like empty nest. My youngest is about to go to college. We're talking a whole lot about, oh, we have couple friends to hang out with. We have other adult friends now instead of
Hmm.
just teenage activities. Um, so redefining comes back to recognizing what those values are and then having an awareness of how you can make sure that those values are actually showing up. And they
Hmm.
don't all have to show up in your work. Some of them, it's very clear. You're like, okay, this is my work persona is meeting these values, but this over here, this is really my rock climbing activities, my hobbies.
Hmm.
This is my outdoorsmanship and my adventure and my like whatever it is. It doesn't all have to fit under that umbrella of work, but
Okay.
the more of them that can be, that you're seeing how they fit together in that professional space, that's going to keep you more aligned with making sure you're showing up in a way that feels authentic to who you are in this moment and who you want to become.
This is sort of a softball question and it's closed. It's not an open ended question,
Okay.
but I think it's going to lead to some interesting discussion. Do you think it's possible to define and mold your identity if you've not articulated what's important to you, your values?
I think many of us have identities that we would recognize and identify with that were not intentionally formed.
Hmm.
So, on one hand, I would say all of us have identities that we didn't intentionally pick up. So, yes,
Hmm.
I think the space of being intentional with creating the identity of who you want to become and who you want to be and how that person shows up to have the things that you want to have and to be the person you want to be, I think there you have to know what your values are.
Okay, I agree. So I'm trying to decide if I let my own curiosity drive the next few questions or if I want to stay a little bit on track because I'm very curious knowing your background in social psychology.
Mhm.
If we can talk a little bit more academically, just briefly about identity, how it's shaped from childhood, um, and sort of at what stages are we most capable of forming or reforming it for ourselves.
I think if we're doing the work to be intentional, it's a thing that we can do at any stage of life.
Okay.
But I think most of us, most of our early identities, they are formed through conditioning, through the
Mm-hmm.
environment that we grew up in, whether that's our family circle, our religious affiliations, the schools we went to, the communities we grew up in, those types of things. So a lot of those identities are formed for us. And we start believing this is who I'm supposed to be, this is how I'm supposed to show up, this is what people value about who I am and what I can do. And I think at any stage along the way, we can choose to be intentional.
Okay.
And forming, I also want to say that being intentional, creating a new identity doesn't necessarily mean you're getting rid of all the others because we have a lot of identities. We have a lot of
That's true.
social roles, social identities that,
Yeah.
in one moment my mom hat is on because I have a sick kid, but at the same time I have to show up
Mm-hmm.
for a board meeting and it's about juggling some of those roles. But when it comes to that identity piece, that strong core kind of recognition of who I am and what makes me unique from the larger group, but also connects me to the meaningful parts of that larger group, the parts, the communities I identify with, that larger identity, I think we can be intentional with it kind of at any stage.
Okay. What are some of the indicators of identity? Behaviors, mindsets? How does our identity show up in the world?
I mean, it shows up kind of in everything.
Okay. Fair, fair.
And this was actually, one of the things I would love people to take away is identity shapes everything, but especially in leadership. So if you want to lead differently, then you have to be differently. The way you show up, in the way you engage, has to be different. But our identity shapes our beliefs, our behaviors, our perceptions, kind of the reality around us. Because if we believe that something is impossible, then we may not see the opportunities to disprove that belief.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, we all have a confirmation bias. We go through the world thinking, "Oh, the sky's going to be blue every day," and maybe we've learned along the way. Some days it rains, some days it's cloudy. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, so
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have blue skies and 100 something degrees for the next 5 months. But I know in July and maybe a little bit in August, we're going to have some monsoons. We'll have a few rains. But when we believe something to always be the case, we stop looking for things that challenge that belief.
Okay.
So, to the extent that our identity shapes our beliefs, then that changes the opportunities we see. That changes the connections we're going to make in the world. It changes even the way we see or view a problem. Because you can have two people, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the easiest example is political parties. You can
Oh
have
my
two people
gosh.
from different political parties. We're not getting political here, I promise.
Thank you.
Say that there's a problem here, and the way they approach it, their solutions are going to be night and day different because of that belief structure that formed that identity of being part of this larger group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So identity shapes everything.
I agree. I think this is the last question in the sequence that I have here. And I do have a point. I'm getting to a thing. This isn't just my native curiosity. What about the lexicon of identity? How can we effectively talk about identity and sense of self? What I'm sort of thinking of is we can define it. I can say sense of self or beliefs about how I am.
Yeah.
But what's the language to describe an individual's identity? And I realize it's wildly broad, but just to help us understand and put some scope around, when I talk about identity, it's things like I'm a Midwesterner, and I want to work really hard, and my family is important to me. Those types of things.
Yeah.
So does that question make sense?
It does. And the thing is, like, if we want to go academic, then you can break it down so many different ways because there's a definition of self and of self-concept and of self-esteem and of identity and of social roles. And all of those things in the academic literature are going to be defined differently. And in in
Yes.
common conversation, when you're working with leaders, when you're working with humans, and not that academics are not humans, I don't mean to imply that, but when you're getting to that stage of, okay, but how do we actually impact people? Then identity can be a kind of much more broad. It can incorporate social roles and self-concept and those types of things. But when I think of identity, it comes down to, I love the question from Alice in Wonderland when the caterpillar has his little hookah and he's like, who are you? And it's
Yes.
answering the question of like, who are you? And the way people answer that, and it can be, like you said, it can be many things. I'm a mom, I'm a Texan, I'm a psychologist, I'm a trombonist, I'm a ballroom dancer. I've like at different stages of my life, I've had all of those were identities I held at different
Mm-hmm.
times. But it's a matter of which parts of those identities, which parts of those various identities are consistent across your lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
and which ones have shaped and grown and changed along the way. There have been times where I thought, okay, I'm a researcher. And yes, I've worked in research roles. I have those research skills. I don't think of myself as a researcher anymore, in part
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not in the journals. I'm not reading them as regularly as I did back in an academic life, right? But if somebody said, "Can you do research?" Oh, absolutely. Like those skills are still there. So yeah, I'm still a researcher, kind of, but it's not in practice.
It's fair.
So I wouldn't say it's a core part of my identity anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There is a gentleman, I think he calls himself the Penguin. He writes about running as a non-elite runner, John Bingham,
mm,
if I'm remembering the details correctly. When I was doing marathon running
mhm.
consistently, I kept a quote from him, um, usually on my desk, and it's, "If you run, you are a runner."
I know the quote exactly
And that
because I used to
is,
be a runner.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's exactly that. If you get to define parts of your identity based
Yes.
on your activities, your roles, and sometimes you can look at, I want to be this way or I want to be this thing. For
Mhm.
example, I want to be a runner. Okay, what does it take to be a runner? I need to
Mhm.
run.
There you go.
Yeah.
Check that box.
Yeah. So there is a logic behind these questions. The how do we form identity? What are the indicators of it? How do we talk about it effectively in the world? And it's for leaders, I want them to have knowledge of identity so that they can be aware and conscientious of their own and the
Mhm.
impact it has, so that they can not diagnose people's identity, but they can observe and lead
Mhm.
diverse identities on their team. And then what do they need to know to grow as well? So I think the question I would ask of you at this point is, do you feel like we've kind of covered that do, lead, grow gamut sufficiently? Or is there anything that's been left out?
No, I mean, I think I love your questions and I love your approach to this because I think the important thing is recognizing, like coming back to this idea of blind spots. Well, our blind spots, they're not flaws. They're opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you need to characterize them as a flaw, then okay, then flaws are great. Flaws are makes things interesting, right? I don't remember which there's an Asian culture that talks about the breaking ceramics and when they're put
Yes,
back together with
it's
the gold and the gold makes them
Japan.
valuable,
Japan.
right?
I'm probably going
Yes.
to butcher the word, but I actually was just looking this up on Friday. It's wonderful serendipity, isn't it? I
Yeah.
believe it's called kintsukuroi,
Okay. I
and
know I've read the name of it and I
it's
was like,
it,
it's
it
Japanese.
means golden repair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like our flaws are beautiful, or our
Hmm.
flaws make things interesting. And those blind spots, if you have to call them flaws, think of them as beautiful flaws, but
Hmm.
they're also just those opportunities for growth. And being intentional with our identities, there's compassion there too. When people give you that feedback,
Hmm.
when you get curious, when you have this moment of, even if it's just pattern recognition of going, man, I keep self-sabotage, I keep shooting myself in the foot here, having that compassion to go, cool, that was an identity of being this overachiever, that gifted kid identity. It served me really well to a point,
Hmm.
but it's no longer helpful. And so I can release that and I can replace it with something that is much more aligned with who I am right now and where I want to be going. And when you realize the power in that, and on
Hmm.
one hand, it can feel, you can feel kind of powerless of going, well, there's so many identities and there's so much going on, I can't really change anything. But it's also really powerful to go, I can change this about what I believe about myself
Hmm.
and where my value is and what impact that has and where I'm showing up and how I'm showing up. And I can extend that compassion to other people too. Because like you said, like we're all human. We're
Hmm.
all flawed. And that's really interesting. That's where the fun comes in. That's where those
It
opportunities
is.
come in.
I agree 100%, 1,000% that our blind spots create opportunities for us to demonstrate compassion for ourselves and for others.
And curiosity.
Curiosity, yes. And that spending time contemplating blind spots creates this amazing opportunity for choice for
Mhm.
yourself and for other people too. I can choose to continue to be blind And there are reasons for it that may be
Absolutely.
entirely understandable, acceptable, and really the best way to go.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say choosing to stay blind, it is not judgment. That is a reasonable choice.
Yeah.
But acknowledging I have choice, I have agency, and I may not see myself completely, but there are things I can do to act on that and change it if I need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah. And then providing that same opportunity for the people whom you lead as well. Because, like you, they are fallible, they are flawed, they are perfectly, awfully human.
Yeah, perfectly imperfect, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, now I'm reminded of The Good Place. Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
Oh, wonderful. So, do you have anything going on with Level 42 Consulting right now that you want to share before we start our wrap up?
Nothing specifically new. I mean, like I said, I'm working with those high achieving leaders. So if the listeners want somebody to shine a light on those blind spots, I'm happy to have those conversations. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I will make certain that your LinkedIn profile and your company website are in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
What are some kind of closing thoughts that you have, ma'am?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think the key takeaways are that our identity shapes everything. So if you want to show up differently, then you have to be in this moment. In the future, you have to be different. Blind spots are opportunities. No one's going to shame you for having them because we all have them. And it's a matter of when you are finding yourself stuck in that comfort zone that's no longer comfortable, like that the discomfort is growing because you are not, then maybe it's time to dig in, get some feedback, get somebody who can shine a light on those blind spots that can be that accountability partner, that sounding board as you work through them, replace them. And finally, I think that we don't have to earn rest or worthiness. The most powerful leaders, they're going to be leading from alignment, not from exhaustion. So thinking that because I'm the leader, I have to show up and I have to do this and I have to do this, I have to do this. If you allow yourself to rest, you're going to come back stronger, more focused, and it gives your team the space to rest as well. And then in turn, they're going to come back stronger, more focused, more driven, more all of those things.
I love that as a final moment, the bow on this conversation, because when we talk about things like flaws and blind spots, for people, particularly people that struggle with perfectionism, it can unintentionally and naturally lead to people feeling diminished in some way. But your blind spot has no impact on your worthiness.
Correct.
Oh, what a wonderful place to end. Bena, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. Again,
I've enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Me as well. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. If this conversation sparked something useful, please follow the Comfy Chairs and leave a review. Those small actions help more people find the show. Got a leadership question you'd like featured in a Future Comfy HQ episode? Please send it my way. I'd love to hear what's on your mind. And when you're ready to move from ideas into action, 123 Limited helps leaders build stronger teams, sharper strategies, and better talent plans. Learn more at 123limited.com. That's ONE23LTD.com. Thanks for listening.